Madam, start. Motto, madam.
Welcome all. Good evening, good afternoon, and welcome all the participants to today's program. And we have our learned speaker with us. So before that, I request Vinayji to play our institute motto, and I request every participant to put their hand on heart. Please, Vinayji.
य एष सुप्तेषु जाग्रति य एष सुप्तेषु जाग्रति कामं 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 कामपुरुषो पुरुषो निर्मिमाणः निर्मिमाणः तदेव शुक्रं तद्ब्रह्मा तद्ब्रह्मा तदेवामृतमुच्यते तस्मिन् लोकः शतः सर्वे तदूनात्यपि कश्चन एतद्वैता 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 एतद्वैता.
Thank you, Vinayji. Now our first speaker is only. Before that, I want to invite our energetic and charming chairman, C.A. Murtuza sir, and I request him to share his word of wisdom with us. Sir, please.
Thank you, Pinky madam. A warm good afternoon to all the participants, and extremely sorry for getting a little delayed. Today the MOC was going to be Secretary WRP Shweta Jain, but she had a family emergency and we had to rope in Pinky immediately. So we called her up, she logged in, and it took us little of those time to get inside. But friends, let me first welcome CA Navneet Bhansal. He is going to be our first speaker, and he is going to talk about the current state and the future state of shared service center and managed business services in India. And I'm sure a lot of action is happening. And Navneet, I looked at the presentation, and he's going to be a treat to listen to today. After that, we get into the panel discussion, and there we have on the panel Vivek Shah, and a lot of points he's going to cover up on setting up of shared service center and share a lot of his experience. Similarly, we also join with Jigar Doshi. Jigar is also here, and he is also going to cover offshore accounting and managed businesses in accounts and taxation. And then we got Prashant Bhat. Prashant also I saw, he is already joined in. So Prashant is an IT IT security expert, and he's going to talk about the IT security aspects of the data transfer, etc. And of course, to get everything out of all of three of them, we got a moderator in Mazhar, who is going to ask them difficult questions and extract a lot of value for all of us today. And let me also thank Mazhar for designing this unique program. Mazhar, extremely grateful to you. An excellent program, and I think need of the hour. So really great program. Let me also recognize presence of Rinkesh Solanki. He is our coordinator, and there are a lot of coordinators who help us and providing selfless service and being here on various of our programs. So thank you to all. And we got more than 200 registrations, and as we are speaking, we already have 108 people in the panel, and I'm sure some will be joining in further in the next few minutes. So really a great session. So what is it? So like, see, as you can see on the screen, the theme for this year is lead. That is lead towards excellence, achievement and development. And we are also talking about various innovation. And what we have done is we have identified 5 goals for this year. And also with these goals, we got measurable activities, and like we want to ensure that we implement them. But when we talk about, only if I touch the first 2 goals which we have in mind, one, how do we ensure that we bring newer opportunities to the members, and members can then accept or adopt whatever they want and get into that line of business, and they can increase their revenue. That is number one, which is where the whole offshoring and shared service comes into play. And the second one, how do we equip our members technologically? Means like whether it is an idea tool for data analytics, or whether it is a course on Python and coding in Python and SQL, or whether it is a Power BI and Tableau. We are trying to do everything, and wherever who wants to come and attend, they can attend. Now, I'll take maybe one more minute. So like, see, before COVID and after COVID, how has the situation changed? And I'm sure some of the speakers and panelists today here will agree with me. So for many years, chartered accountants from India have been traveling to US for the period November, December, January, February, for doing the SOX design, the SOX testing, etc. And they used to go there physically. When the COVID struck, our people could not travel to US or to other parts of the world. And there, they still did not have people. So they wanted the work to be done. So they started sharing data. So that means they had some doubt in their mind whether the data will be secured or not. Once the data started coming inside, for the first year and even for the second year, we delivered right quality output sitting offsite as well. And there was no data security breaches, which has removed the fear from the mind of the world, and they know that the data is secure in India. The other advantages that we have, and I'm sure a lot of things will be spoken in the next 3 hours. We as Indians, written and oral communication is good. There are a lot of nationalities who struggle with written English and oral communication English. Okay, the written and oral, we can. Similarly, whether it is accounting standard or Ind AS or IFRS or any other gap, UK gap, we are trained and we can quickly pass the accounting entries and make it. So accounting is not a problem. Technical knowledge is also there. And the biggest advantage, again, data is secure. And now, and one other thing, we are flexible. Whether we need to deliver at 2 in the night or 5 in the morning, we ensure that the right quality work is delivered at the right time. So I think with all those advantages, lot more work is going to come into India. Lot more shared service centers are going to be started, and which is already happening. And now people are even starting the data and digital centers in India. So host of opportunities. And I think this program is at the right time. Let me again thank Mazhar and all the panelists for sparing their valuable time. And I'm sure the participants will take back home something from here. So extremely grateful and happy learning to all of you. And over to you again, Pinky Madam, for the introduction of the first speaker so that we can get started. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Murtuja sir, for your word of wisdom. Now our today's speaker is Mr. C.A. Navneet Bhansal sir, and I just want to introduce him before you. Navneet Bhansal is a CEO of JSW Global Business Solution, and he is an expert in setting up self-sustainable global shared service centers, both captive and outsourced. He is a chartered accountant and science graduate with 25 years of work experience. Career spanning from Big Four consultant to global tech company, and now with the largest steel producer in India. Navneet has worked with various international and domestic work culture. He has been instrumental in setting up 4 shared service in his career. Status quo is a big no for him. He loves doing new things and doing experiment to continuously improve self and organizations. He worked for, and under his leadership, organization have brought in advanced digitization and robotic in processes. Navneet is a people person. He cherishes his age-old professional connection, who continue to remain in touch despite choosing different career paths, humble to be playing a role in their professional lives. Navneet actively participate and contributed at industry conferences and seminars to gain and share experience. He has been a speaker on a multiple industry forum like SSF India, IAM, other institutions nationally as well as internationally. And he is also the recipient of many awards like Industry Forum of Business Process Management Achiever Awards in Global India, Best Shared Services Award in India, Best People Practice in Shared Services, and Best RPA COE. With this brief introduction, I welcome Navneet, And I thank you to accept our invitation to speak in the event. So please, Navneet, floor is yours.
Sure. Thank you, Pinky ji, and thank you, Murtaja. I think let me first thank WARC for inviting me in this conference. It's really great to know and see that WARC is so active and contributing in the recent trends and latest trends in the industry. Shared services and outsourcing, uh, while this is the largest jobs creator in India, but outside this outsourcing world, it is spoken very little about. So I'm really happy that today we have this entire community of chartered accountants who are coming together to discuss and know and learn more about outsourcing and shared services. Now, what I can do probably over next 40-50 minutes is share some of my past experiences and my thoughts about where shared services and outsourcing industry is heading towards. And then probably towards the end, I can answer if you have any questions. Feel free to stop me in between if you want to have any particular question or comment on any of my slides. So is my slide visible? Just if one or two can confirm.
Yes, Navneet ji,
Yes,
we can see your slide and we can hear you and see you.
Excellent.
Yes.
Good.
Yes,
So let me start. I mean, okay, so small background about me. I became chartered accountant in 1996. Before that, I did my graduation in electronics. So a little weird combination, BSc electronics and chartered accountancy, but this is how it happened. First 5-6 years of my career, I was with CA firms and consulting firms like EY. But last 20 years, I have spent my time and career in shaping up shared services, BPOs, and GBS in India. My passion is to start a GBS or a shared service from the scratch for a company. And this is my fourth venture. Currently, I am heading JSW Group Shared Service Center, which is, we call it JSW GBS. I am based out of Mumbai. And yeah, so let me share some of my thoughts about this industry. So what I'll cover today briefly is about the overview about this industry, what shared services or BPO or outsourcing or ITES industry, it has various names and nomenclature. So I'll talk about what exactly it is. What are the demographic details about this industry in India, in Asia Pacific and world at large? What are some of the career opportunities people should look at in this industry, specifically for accounting professionals? I'll spend 5-10 minutes talking about it. And then my favorite topic, what lies ahead? How do we see this industry shaping up in future? In a couple of other forums, I have named this slide as shared services to 2025 and beyond. So I'll probably share some of my thoughts as to how we see this industry growing or how we see this industry shaping up beyond 2025. Now, outsourcing and shared services are very loosely spoken terms. But in my experience, typically we can categorize our entire outsourcing industry into 3 broad categories. Yeah, one is shared service centers, which is nothing but a centralized unit which is dedicated for certain processes and managed by certain people. These shared service centers are largely created by big corporates and big companies to take care of their in-house captive environments. One of the critical component of shared service centers is that it is very highly supported by IT and IT services. And I'll talk a little bit more about it in my future slides. But one of the key characteristics, it is highly supported by IT and IT services. Now, shared services typically are created by bringing work from various physical locations to one centralized location, and then using technology, start delivering services to all those locations from where that work came from. If I take example of my own company, JSW, around 6 years ago, in 2016 to be precise, we created this shared service center in Mumbai, and we have 30 different plant locations or factory locations across India. We are spread across 6 different businesses. We are largely known for our steel because that's our 80% of business. But JSW is also in manufacturing of cement, power generation. We have our own ports. We own a couple of sporting teams like Delhi Capitals and Bombay and Bangalore Football Club, Haryana Kabaddi team. So these are some of the paints. We have very recently ventured into paints. So we are now competing with Asian Paints and Berger Paints of the world. So we have several business lines and we have 30 odd manufacturing locations across India. So when we created this shared service center, we brought in common activities and common work from all these businesses and all these 30 locations into one center in Mumbai. And this is how a shared service center was created. And typically every company does it by bringing work from various locations to a common site. It could be within domestic environment in India, or it could be internationally also. The next component of outsourcing is BPOs, which is very largely known term, business process outsourcing. This is nothing but a third-party outsourcing. In shared services, group manages the services on their own. Employees are on their own roles. Technology is owned by them. Processes are owned by them. But in BPOs, the same set of processes are given to a third-party vendor. We have companies like Infosys, Accenture, Genpact, Wipro, to name few, who are very active and big in terms of managing these processes for their clients. Again, BPOs support both domestic clients as well as international clients. The only difference between captive shared service center and outsourced BPO is that entire administration, management of processes, technology, and people is in-house in shared service centers and is given to a third party in case of BPOs. Otherwise, largely things are similar. Now, the third term, which is typically spoken about, is Global Business Services, GBS. Now, GBS is an evolved version of shared service centers and BPOs. If we go a little bit back in history, around in 1980s to 1990s, when this entire concept of shared services came into picture, companies were creating shared services for their basic transactional repeatable work. Intent was to optimize and intent was to reduce cost. But over the last 20-25 years, companies have realized that these centralized centers can actually be used for more meaningful work and more value-added work. So GBS have evolved from shared service centers and BPOs, and now they have become a very big and key player in the overall value chain in the organizations. GBS today is actually leading from the front the digital strategy for the entire organization. And why to go elsewhere? I can give my own example here. When JSW created its shared service center, we call it GBS here, we are the focal point for all digital interventions which happens across the group. And company is finding it extremely easy and meaningful to start their digital journey from GBS rather than implementing it across 30-40 different locations. So if they implement a digital strategy in GBS, 80% of their work is done. Now, what they need to do is only replicate the same across different locations. So more and more companies are looking at GBS to initiate the digital transformation, to initiate the process transformation for the entire group. And now GBS is not limited to transactional work. In fact, 70-80% of a CFO's work or a profile is now delivered out of GBS. So it has grown to that level. I mean, controllers are sitting in GBS. FP&A, financial planning and reporting heads are sitting in GBS. So that's the kind of value GBS has created for their parent companies. And GBS could be in-house, GBS could be third party. It all depends on the comfort level of the organization, how they want to create. So in nutshell, the entire outsourcing world is typically categorized into these three broad buckets: shared service centers, BPOs, and global business services. A quick 30 seconds view of how this industry has evolved. As I mentioned, around 80s and 90s, probably American Express and Genpact were the very first two companies who opened their centers in India. And I remember when I was doing my CA, my first assignment was with American Express, where I was involved in their process reviews and audits. And this is how it became fancy for me to, do something in shared services and for shared services. So around 80s and 90s, a lot of global companies, largely from US, started creating their offshore centers in India or countries like India. The pure play objective was reduce cost and improve administrative processes. That was the beginning. But then as this industry got matured, more and more global companies started creating multiple regional service centers. For example, for a global company, they would create a shared service center in US to cater to that geography. They would create a similar shared service center in Europe and a third one in Asia Pacific. All three were exactly looking alike. They were exactly managing a similar processes. The only difference was they were managing their own time zones and language requirements. And then around 2000s, when this industry got a little bit more mature, companies started leveraging third-party vendors for their work. And that is where companies like Infosys and Genpact, GE became Genpact, and then all the big fours started opening their own outsourcing units, etc. So these companies came into picture, and companies started giving their transactional work to these BPOs in India. Apart from India, other centers also started started to get evolved, but India remained the most preferred location to move this kind of works. Now, another 10 years were very crucial when technology started playing a key role. And by 2010, these so-called back offices become center offices. More and more companies, more and more CEOs, more and more CFOs started leveraging their offshore centers and BPOs, not only to do their transactional work, but also to manage their mid office or a center office. What it means is, except the strategic and senior level profiles, which will remain in retained location, large part of their day-to-day work started to move to shared service centers, be it outsourced or in-house. And now the recent phenomena in last 8-10 years is that GBS has started coming to you. And again, it was more driven from technology. Companies started to find GBS to play a more critical role in transformation, because in one center, they were able to bring in latest technology. It was easy to implement technology with the same group of people sitting in one or two different locations. So more and more GBS were created, and more SSCs were converted into GBS with high value and high critical jobs with the use of latest technology. So that's a small story in terms of how this industry evolved from in last 20-25 years. Now, This slide typically talks about the recent trends in outsourcing industry or ITES or shared service industry. Digital adoption is the topmost change or trend which is happening today. GBS organizations are adopting digital very, very fast pace. Worldwide, GBS is looking at a big catalyst to bring in new technology and digital transformation. Again, giving our own example here. Yeah, I think someone's mic was on. Anyways, yeah. So, yeah, coming back to our own story in JSW, any digital transformation, whether it is on the vendor invoice processing side or month-end close and quarter-end close of books is concerned, whether reconciliations are concerned, whether customer reconciliations are concerned, whether procurement is concerned, everything starts from GBS. We bring in new technology, we bring in new partners who will implement it. We test it, we implement it in GBS first, and then we replicate it across the organization. And that model has worked really, really well. Around 4 years ago, GBS was the first entity in entire JSW group who brought in the first robot in the group. So that's the kind of change management GBS is bringing to the organization and its culture and its thought process. Second big latest trend is now companies are not looking at outsourcing as cost reduction measure, but now they're looking at cost efficient phenomena. Companies are bringing more and more higher value work to GBS organizations at a lower cost. Top priorities of CFOs and top priorities of commercial heads and CHROs are being driven considering GBS in mind. GBS is more and more becoming the big data bank for CFOs and CHROs. Mr. Chairman mentioned about the importance of data, its security, etc. Unless GBS was created or a shared service center was created, CFOs and CHROs were struggling to get the holistic data from multiple locations, and it would never reconcile. They would never know how many people are working in their entire organization. They would never know what are the weekly and monthly status of their aged items or reconciliations or P&L numbers. But with GBS created, companies have started realizing that now they can have a single source of truth coming from one entity. There are no biases, there are no local influences, there are no management intervention or interference. Independent unit is providing independent data to the senior management. And that is a big takeaway for CEOs and CFOs from GBS. They might be having 100 transactional complaints, but the one big support which they get is timely and accurate data coming from GBS for the entire group. While companies create this GBS or outsourcing unit, typically on an average, they expect 30 to 40% cost efficiency coming in first 1 or 2 years of implementation, and then year on year around 8 to 10% benefits. So that's the kind of value SSC or BPO or GBS provides to the senior leadership of any organization. Now, one interesting factor, and I'm talking about the GBS organization structure, bottom left graph. Bigger companies are using GBS more efficiently. Companies with annual turnover of $25 billion and above, almost 70% of their CFOs and CEOs have responded positively that GBS and SSC's partnership is key to their success. Smaller organizations are still gaining that confidence and expertise in outsourcing their work, either to their own company in-house or to a third party. But as companies are growing bigger, more and more CEOs and CFOs are comfortable leveraging GBS and outsourcing to meet their corporate objectives. Location strategy, India was number one. India is still number one. A lot of countries are trying to catch up with India. Poland, Philippines are the prominent names, but the gap is still very, very wide. Gap is still very, very wide. I mean, almost 60-70% of global outsourcing work is still delivered out of India. And that's the kind of edge India has got over other countries globally when it comes to outsourcing. Now, before I move on, anyone wants to comment or question anything, or should I just go ahead and we'll take questions towards the end?
Actually, sir, there is 3 questions in chat box. One is, how does one find Indian CTH for this IAM jobs or any other places? I hear Rajkot, Surat, Ahmedabad, Indore are hubs for offshore practices views. And any contact or way to find clients like Upwork, approx hourly rate or way to price offering. There are so many questions, sir. If you can open the question.
I think on this, I don't think this is the right forum because I'm not trying to sell any services here. So, but yes, as you correctly mentioned, the tier 2 cities are coming up very fast in terms of offshore practices. But contact sharing and hourly rate, etc., I think this is not the right forum to talk about it.
Okay, and one question is 8% to 10% year-on-year cost benefit before salary increase?
Okay, so the question which I understand is this 8 or 10% of annual productivity is before or after salary increase. So yes, good question. So typically what happens is year-on-year inflation and salary increase is absorbed by the offshore entity or the GBS. So if the annual average salary increase and inflation is 10 to 12%, typically my price to the customer would not change by so much. So in a nutshell, yes, it is before salary increase. Typically over next 3 or 4 years, I would continue to absorb the salary increase and inflation without charging extra to my client. Second question was on FP&A. I think this is history now. A lot of FP&A work is happening on an outsourcing work. And now people are not insisting on-site FP&A. I mean, we have big teams, 100, 200 people who are supporting FP&A from offshore locations. Is long-term career good in GBS if RPA will automate jobs? Well, I've been spending my last 20 years in GBS, and I believe I'm doing good. Okay, good. So let's move on to the next topic of demographics. This is typically a favorite topic for chartered accountant because here you will see some data and graphs, etc., etc. But the first slide again reiterate that you name an industry and India remains the top priority or a number 2 globally for their outsourced work. Be it IT related outsourcing, be it finance related outsourcing, be it any other. Consumer industry, I mean companies like Tesco, Coca-Cola, Unilever, all of them have their centers in India. Energy resource industry products, yeah, JSW, GE, British Petroleum, all of them are working out of India. Financial services, there is a long list. All big fours have their centers in India. Accenture, WNS, Bank of America, American Express, everyone works out of India. Life sciences and healthcare is a little niche. United States still retain the top position when it comes to the creating of shared service centers, but India is close number 2. And I'm sure over a bit of time, India would also catch up in this space. Media telecom again, India is number 1 and US is number 2. And examples are Google, Voda, Airtel, IBM, Accenture. All of them have their large centers in India who are supporting their global parents. These are some of the top ITS companies. Very few logos I could capture here, but there are many more. The last count was around 1400 plus outsourcing companies in India we have. Now, how is ITS market? Typically this and ITES is an IT enabled services, which is also a name for outsourcing or BPO, because these are largely technology driven outsourcing. So we also call it as an ITES. Now, close to 44 lakh people are employed across 1400 companies in India in this industry. Largest export services in India is this business. Almost $25 billion we generate as a revenue in foreign currency for India. And future prospects extremely, extremely promising. Globally, shared service market is expected to be around $152 billion in next 2 years. YOY growth around almost 15% and CAGR almost 17%. So one of the best performing industries globally and consistently for last 15, 17 years has been ITES market. And at least for next foreseeable future, next 10, 12, 15 years, we do not see any reversal happening in this trend. This industry will continue to grow very, very rapidly over next several years. One of the estimates says that globally there are close to 34,000 outsourcing companies. Now, I was specifically asked to touch on this particular topic, that what are the career opportunities for chartered accountants and cost accountants and finance professionals in this industry.
Sir, before this topic, there are some questions on GBS. Can we take that questions?
Yeah, please.
First question is, what are the drawbacks of setting up GBS?
What are the drawbacks of setting up a GBS? There are, one is a real drawback and one is a perceived drawback. The real drawback could be that you are actually handing over your information and data to an independent company if you are outsourcing it to a third party, or you are handing over your information and data to a captive in-house company also. So a lot of CFOs and CMOs and CHROs may not be very, very comfortable handing over this information and data to another leader or another team. That's the only drawback I see. Perceived drawbacks are many. A lot of companies and leaders believe that they will lose their control, both on people as well as on the numbers and processes. That's the biggest perceived drawback. But this is not real. Believe me, this is not real. Second perceived drawback is a lot of middle management and junior management people show resistance in outsourcing the work, because they are the most affected people when a company decides to outsource, because their jobs needs to be relocated. They will have to relocate. Then they see a lot of change management coming their way. So they are the most impacted people, and that's some companies or some people see it as the drawback. But otherwise, I do not see any significant drawback from company's perspective.
Thank you, sir. And second question is, can you list down initial step to start the vertical of GBS?
Well, okay, it's a long process, but I will try to summarize in 1 minute. See, the biggest make or break in creating a GBS is the sponsorship from the top. It is not about process. It is not about technology. It is all about people. The moment a company decides to create a shared service center or outsource its works to BPO, the biggest resistance comes from its people. And it comes from all levels. Everyone thinks that, okay, their empire will be smaller, their control will go down, their jobs might be threatened, etc., etc. So the sponsorship from the topmost management is key to the success of creating GBS. It has to be a top-down approach. You cannot have a democracy in deciding whether to create a GBS or not. Once you do that, identify the right technology, and I would strongly recommend that hire a consultant who has an experience of setting up these BPOs and shared service centers, who can evaluate your processes, identify which processes to be outsourced and what technology to be brought in. Because if you do not choose the right technology, it is extremely difficult to manage a work from a remote location. So pick up the right technology. You will have to invest money initially to create this shared service center, but pick up the right technology and select the right processes along with the top management sponsorship, I think are the key to create a successful GBS. Rest all is transactional. You can always create SOPs for your processes, how work will happen, who will do what transaction, all that will fall in place automatically. But if you take care of your sponsorship, technology, then I think your 80% job is done.
Next question is, sir, what kind of services we can provide under GBS?
Largely, the kind of services which are very, very common are finance and accounts. And under finance account also, there are various services. Accounts payable, which is vendor invoice management, invoice processing till payment, reconciliations, AR is account receivable, cash applications, raising invoices on customers, following up for the payments, receiving payments, doing customer reconciliations, credit worthiness, all of that is managed from GBS. And then third vertical is R2R, record to report, or a GL function, where month-end close, quarter-end close, year-end close happens from shared service centers. Draft, P&L and balance sheets created out of shared service centers. Audits are managed from shared service centers. Reconciliations and balance sheet schedules are done from shared service centers. Notes to accounts, first cut goes from shared service center to CFOs. So all this happen in finance. Now, when we talk about other activities, IT is another big. A lot of companies have outsourced their IT to GBS. Commercial processes, a lot of procurement and purchase order creation work happens from GBS. HR, payroll management, employee database management, hire to retire cycle, all that is done from GBS. So these are the 3 or 4 top processes which are good contenders for GBS, and largely companies start with this.
Okay, sir. Next question is long-term career good in GBS, and if RPA will automated job?
By definition, RPA will automate job, yes, but will that impact jobs? I don't believe so. And probably I'll try to cover this question a little later in my slide when I talk about future of GBS. But yes, I am a very, very firm believer that outsourcing is to stay here for long. Outsourcing is the largest job creator, and outsourcing companies produce some of the best leaders and managers. So is it good for long-term career? 110% it is good for long-term career. It all depends what you are looking for in your career. It makes you a good people manager. It makes you a good manager. It makes you a good leader. And outsourcing industry is a good paymaster as well. So it takes care of all our personal and financial needs. It takes care of those very well.
Next question is related to this also. How this will help to SMPs to grow their practice by adopting outsourcing rather than traditional way of practice?
So I'm sure a lot of practicing chartered accountants would know by then that there are marketplaces available like Amazon and Flipkart, where these websites provide CA services or chartered accounting services. Yeah, there are group of chartered accountants who enroll themselves with these websites, and as a customer can pick and choose my services through them. This is nothing but outsourcing. This is nothing but outsourcing. There is no personal face-to-face interaction. I need to get my returns file. I go to a website. One CA will pick it up as an assignment and do my file. So a lot of CAs I know have started small, but they have taken over work from their US and UK small establishments, and they start their compliance work and book closing and vouching work from India. 10 people, 15 people, 20 people team they create, and they support small businesses for abroad.
And one last question on GBS. FP and A may sit in GBS, but recruiter do not want GBS profiles since they are not on site with business. How do you address this while attracting FP and A talent?
Change the recruiter. They do not know the latest trends. A person who has done FP&A in a GBS environment is one of the more learned FP&A person in industry, because in an outsourcing company, that person would have done FP&A for multiple clients. He would be accustomed to different reportings, different analysis, different budgeting exercises. If you hire an FP&A person from a particular company or industry, he or she would have spent last 15 years doing the same work for one company only. But if you pick up a person from a shared services environment, in last 10 years, that person would have done FP&A for 15 different clients or 15 different companies. So that's the kind of experience you get if you hire people from outsourcing industry. So I think the recruiter needs to be better educated.
That's all the questions, sir. You can carry on your slide.
Oh, thank you. Okay, I think a lot of career opportunities have already been discussed. So maybe that makes my life a little easier. I won't spend much time. But yeah, so these are some of the career opportunities people should look at in outsourcing or in ITES industry. On the left-hand side, okay, so let me take a step back. Chartered accountants are not only about bookkeeping and CFO profile. Gone are the days when a chartered accountant used to aspire to become a CFO only in corporate world, or a practicing chartered accountant when you want to run your own business. Now, chartered accountants are more and more getting involved in outside finance and accounts domain as well. Chartered accountants are heading commercial departments, procurement departments. Chartered accountants are heading companies. They are CEOs, CMOs. Chartered accountants are, like MBAs, chartered accountants are being seen as a good leadership material to manage a particular process or a particular domain. So if we look beyond a typical controller or a CFO profile, there are plethora of opportunities for chartered accountants to explore. And in ITES industry, they get a lot of opportunities. For example, if you are a process expert, process leader, delivery leader, process specialist, you can be a champion of your process in ITES industry. Project man, if you like driving projects, almost every ITES or outsourcing company requires PMOs, project management and transition people. So if you have a fancy of driving projects, you have a fancy of driving a new implementation of technology and new implementation of processes, ITES industry should be a good place to be in. A lot of PMOs and transition managers are needed in this industry. If you're a functional expert, as a chartered accountant, if you're a functional expert in GL function or in related party or in accounts payable, any area pickup, reconciliations. Shared services provide large teams, hundreds and hundreds in numbers, and you get an opportunity to not only lead those many people, but also deliver those specialist job to your customer or to your parent company. Technology. If you have a good blend of CA and technology certifications, and I know that now ICAI is very aggressive in terms of including technology related components in their entire curriculum. CA or finance and technology is a deadly combination, and ITS industry provides a lot of opportunities to those chartered accountants who have a knack of technology as well, because every ITES company, be it shared services, BPO, require chartered accountants who understands finance, who can lead large teams, and who can transform processes by bringing new technology. So if you have a combination of technology and CA, I think you have so many job opportunities available in outsourcing companies. And overall businesses, now outsourcing companies are growing bigger and bigger. They are opening multiple centers. They have multiple departments. So it becomes, and CAs become a preferred choice to lead a particular department or a business unit or a center when it comes to outsourcing. So, I mean, by the time we retire, if we are a CEO or a business center head of a mid to large size of outsourcing companies, I think it's a decent position to retire from. So to answer some of the earlier questions which came in, is outsourcing a long-term career choice? Definitely it's a long-term career choice. You join an outsourcing company as a fresh chartered accountant, and in 15 to 18 years, you can expect to become the head of that business or head of that center, which means heading 200, 400, 600,000 people, which itself is a big leadership capability to building, and also to manage one or multiple businesses. So that's the kind of career opportunities are available in this segment or in this industry for chartered accountants or finance professionals. Now, finance knowledge and technical knowledge is a functional or a technical skill. Is that enough to become successful in ITES industry? Probably not. ITES industry also involves a lot of other things. Change management. Think of a situation, you are creating a shared service center in Mumbai and you are asking 40 or 50 people to move from a tier 3 city in Orissa, where the plant or a factory is located, to Mumbai with family, lock, stock, barrel. If he or she does not move, his job will not be there because that work has moved to shared service center. Think of a guy or a girl who is born and brought up in some European country, and suddenly you say your job is moving to India. You have two options: either you move or you leave. So these kind of change managements are significant requirement in ITES industry. It involves technical knowledge, but it also involves a lot of emotional quotient to deal with. You have to deal with people emotions. You have to deal with people anger. You have to deal with managers and leaders insecurity. What will happen if their work and team moves elsewhere? Will they be redundant? So one of the very, very key skill which is needed in ITES industry is how do you manage change? Technology, people, and process wise. So that's a very, very sought after skill which is needed. Experience with ERP systems. You cannot outsource a work unless you have a very strong backbone of technology and systems. Initial days, companies used to have different ERPs in their different centers or different countries. But to create a robust shared service center, it is important that we bring in all companies and all countries into one common platform. Then only synergies will come. So if you have experience in a particular ERP system, you would be preferred to be hired if that company also, or your potential employer also has that ERP. Analytics. It is not only about processing of information, it is also about giving business insights and business information. Yeah. So analytics skill is needed. Process expertise, I don't need to speak about, everyone knows about it. And digital skills, I don't need to speak about, everyone knows about it. So these are some of the skills which come very, very handy if you're looking for a career in a ITES industry. Now this is the last section. Probably I'll take 10 more minutes if I have time.
Can we take a question before your last session?
Yes, please.
There is a question that what kind of technology a CA should learn to improve his or her career prospect in this industry, and difference between digital skill and experience in ERP system.
So first question, please wait for my next slide. I think I should be able to answer that there. Parth, your question, I'll try to answer in next slide. And Anand, difference between digital skills and experience in ERP are two different things. ERP is a subset of digital. Digital is wide and big. Digital includes not only ERP, but also things like RPA, robots, artificial intelligence, machine learning, simplistic way, learning macros. Yeah, so all this comes under digital skills. Creating workflows. How do you move information, paperless information from one area to other area? So digital is a big brother of ERP. ERP is one component or one system of this digital world. But digital is much, much larger. And in a couple of my next slide, you will see what kind of digital we are talking about. But the key difference is ERP is a very small component of overall digital. Digital is much bigger.
Navneet, can you take question in Q&A also? In Q&A, there is question that when companies have a small team and varied experience needed across tax, FP&A, controlling, treasury, is there value in company profile for GBS experience of large team leads of non-CH where typically one vertical and no rotation?
So that's a wrong interpretation. GBS provides the highest number of job rotations and multiple skills. Typically, in any big GBS or an outsourcing company, you would not find same person doing a same job for more than 2.5 to 3 years. We compulsorily rotate people from one function to other. Okay, so all the functions you just spoke about, FP&A, tax, controlling, treasury, believe me, GBS world is the only area where you can learn all of this over 7 or 8 years. If you join a core accounting or a finance team in any company, people would be extremely reluctant to give you different exposures. If you are good in tax, they would want you to retire from tax. If you are good in controlling, they would want you to retire from them because they feel that the moment you move, their function will collapse. GBS or outsourcing is only function where people get job rotations very, very easily. And in my personal view, whether you do FP&A for 3 years or whether you 10 years, there is very, very little difference or learning which happens beyond 3 or 4 years. Yeah, after that, you keep repeating and keep getting more and more expertise. That's all. So if you are looking for various functions exposure, look at ITES.
Now, sir, you can take, or you can carry forward.
Also, GBS typically hires those with non first attempt CA rank. Do you find quality of talent? So I am the first attempt CA rank.
एग्जैक्टली सर, मतलब एक दस अटेम्प्ट कर सकते हैं हम लोग कि अगर ये लोग दोनों अप्रोच ओपन रख लें तो दैट विल हेल्प अस.
Sorry, say it again.
एंड इफ यू
Okay, anyways. No, so again, guys, okay, I think let me clear this. What is out? Why people, some people believe that GBS means lower quality of work and people. Do you know that globally there are third-party GBS who provide CFO services to the company? Do you know there are third-party BPOs who provide controllership functions to the companies, who provide tax advisory to the companies? Why do you think someone would be able to provide tax advisory and CFO services if they do not have a good quality chartered accountants? Yeah, because in in accounts department, you may be 20, 30 people, but in outsourcing, you are 200, 300 people. So it is natural that a lot of them would be non-CA and BCom and MComs, but that doesn't mean that, okay, these companies also do not have chartered accountants. My organization today is 450 people and I have 80 chartered accountants. Not everyone would be first attempt, not everyone would be rank holder, but I'm having 80 chartered accountants out of 450 people. And that's the kind of quality work we are delivering to our parent company. Yeah, so GBS is an evolved model now. Lot of good premier institute MBAs, premier institute engineers, and of course ICA is the premier institute, chartered accountants are making their career in outsourcing. How CMAs will get career? Same. CAs, CMAs, cost accountants, every work is being done from an outsourcing company and all of them have a good career opportunities. Okay. There is a perception that in-house team knows business well, but GBS or shared service staff may not. Your views. So you yourself answered, it's a perception. See, it will happen. Okay, if you are doing a work for 15 years, obviously you would know things a little bit better than people who have just started delivering that work from GBS. Give them a couple of years, they would be as good or probably better than someone who has been doing that work for the last 50 years. Problem is that GBS staff often is not engaged and involved in a lot of activities. That's why they don't get that exposure. Otherwise, skills wise, there is no difference between people being hired in GBS and people being hired in core finance. Their salaries, experience, qualification, all are same. Okay. I think in the interest of time, I think I should move on, and towards the end,
Yes,
I'll
sir.
probably take a few
Yes,
more.
sir. Yes, sir. You can move on.
Yeah. But I think we are already running late. Now, this is interesting, and this is my favorite. How many of you would like to have a post-lunch walk on moon? You go to office, you have your lunch, and you go for a walk. How many of you would want to go for a walk on moon and not in the corridor of your office? How many of you would want to have a family lunch while you are in office? A lot of times we struggle with this. Some relatives, some dear ones come home and we are in office. How many of you would want to join them for lunch while you are in office, especially in cities like Mumbai, where home is 2 hours away? It's impossible. All the working women and some men also, they have a responsibility of managing home and managing kids while office. How would you look at a future where you can do all of it together without compromising on work? You manage your home, you manage your kids, and without compromising on home and kids, you manage office. I think these are everyone's wish list. Everyone wants to do multiple things at the same time without stressing themselves too much. So this is the future of work we are talking about. Yeah. When we talk about the future of work, there are few imminent technology which will play an important role. Metaverse is the first one. I'm sure you all would have heard, known, learned in social media, newspapers, news that metaverse is the new avatar in technology and digital space. Facebook has been renamed Meta. Every big company, Google, Microsoft, everyone is investing big in metaverse. Now, what is metaverse? Those who are not very familiar about metaverse, let me just try to summarize. So metaverse is a combination of multiple elements of technology where users live within a digital universe. Let me give you one example. Today, everyone uses Zoom. Today, we are using Zoom and doing this meeting. What is happening? Everyone's name and picture is shown in a different window. Everyone's background is of their home or office, and everyone is talking from their own space, or everyone is listening from their own space. Metaverse is a next level. When you do a Zoom type call, sitting in your respective offices and homes, but you would feel and see yourself as if you are in the same conference room, the way it is shown in this picture. These 11 people are actually working from different locations, but when there is a meeting happening, this is what they would feel and this is what they would do, thanks to metaverse. Everyone's 3D avatar would be sitting on the desk next to each other. They would be interacting, talking, listening, engaging. There would be a speaker, there would be a teacher, there would be a boss, whoever, and they all are in the same room, interacting, chatting the way we do physically today. So very soon, metaverse technology will get into our lives so that without moving ourselves, we can all be seen in one conference room or one meeting place. And by the way, it is not only about office. Sitting at home, you can be at one restaurant having dinner. Sitting at home, you can be in one park walking together. So that's the kind of technology which is coming. And shared services, outsourcing will not be left alone. This industry will also be severely impacted, positive or negative, I leave it to you, but will be impacted by this technology which is coming. How? Those who are familiar with GBS and technology, there is always a argument nearshore versus offshore. A lot of CFOs will say that, oh, you know what, I mean, I'm happy to outsource my work, but it should not be very far off. It should be near my office. I can call them for a meeting whenever I want. That's a very, very common thing we hear when it comes to outsourcing. Rural BPOs, I'm sure a lot of you would have heard about it. Lot of small BPOs are opened in rural areas, tier 2 cities, tier 3 cities. But because there is no enough education, people are not able to speak English properly, there is no enough technology. Well, a lot of them are not flourishing the way more prominent ones are. But think about metaverse. If the metaverse comes, you do not have to bring employees from tier 3 companies to Mumbai and Delhi. Your technology, your office will go to their homes. Through metaverse, a person sitting in Varanasi or sitting in Agartala or sitting in Vijayanagar or sitting in some close to Chennai and Punjab, they all can work from home, but work like in a conference room or in an office environment. Then the difference between nearshore and offshore will go off. You would not even realize that someone is working with you, sitting in the same room, but actually they are 1,000 miles apart. remote working, pandemic has taught us how to work remotely. Yeah, but remote working would be actually a norm going forward. Once you have these kind of technologies, which is far better than today's Zoom calls, wherein people can actually come together and interact, etc., remote working would be more and more come to play. And I think I've spoken about it. People and location would be not very significant. People can work from anywhere they want, and location would be immaterial. Why I'm talking about all this? Because shared services and outsourcing companies are the largest employers in service sector today. So this technology has to impact the maximum workforce which works in this industry. And metaverse is not very far off. In fact, we have tested metaverse in our company, and we have seen a couple of demos very recently. I'm sure over next 12 to 18 months, metaverse would be very, very commonly used in many companies. And then people working in rurals, people working in their small cities, everyone would be equally connected with their parent company or with their employer. Think about it. I'm just giving you one example. Today, each one of us want our kids to be to take degree from world's best universities. But those world's best universities which are either in IIMs of India or Oxfords of US, they have very, very limited seats and very stringent criteria for admission. Once metaverse comes, what is stopping all these universities to come to your doorstep and train you and make you learn in a virtual classroom environment and give you degrees of that? So I foresee that over next 5 to 10 years, the best of the universities would be available in our homes and in our offices, who will come and give us training and will give us lectures in a metaverse environment. No more travel to US for degrees. US will come to us to give us degrees. So that's the kind of change management we are looking at in near future. Second big technology which we are talking about is blockchain. Now, after metaverse, I think blockchain is the second big technology which is coming into play. Now, a lot of people look at blockchain with digital currency, Bitcoin. But blockchain is not about Bitcoin. Blockchain is a segregated general ledger where you initiate one transaction and this will complete the entire value chain till the entry is posted in GL. You initiate one invoice and till general ledger, all transactions and all entries would be tracked, seen, and recorded. You do not have multiple people touching and processing those. A wine company recently used a blockchain. You read a barcode scanner on the wine bottle and it will actually take you to a tree in Netherlands from where those grapes were taken and wine was prepared. So that's the kind of audit trail and history which is available in blockchain. That would be a big disruptor going forward. And again, as I mentioned, shared services or outsourcing industry would not be left alone. All these things blockchain would largely impact the processes, technology, and people's jobs in shared services. You will not have to spend time on processing transactions, but you would spend time in creating insights and using big data. Skills would be changed significantly. One study I was reading, in next 10 years, every educated degree holder would change 3 different jobs in his career. When I say jobs, I do not mean companies. I mean profiles. A finance person will not do finance for entire life. An engineer will not do engineering for entire life. Everyone would need to have at least 3 different functional skills throughout the career. So you will have to do engineering or technology for 10 years, then finance, and then something else. So that's the kind of change which we are seeing going forward happening in our kids, students, and professionals. Data literacy. One of the big studies suggests that only 34% people globally in corporate world, I'm talking of only big corporates, understand data. And data will be the new oil. It is already a new oil, but data will be the new oil in times to come. And we have only 34% corporate population who understands and interpret data. So there is a big scope in data management. There is a big data courses available. There is a data engineering courses available. There is a data science courses available. Whether you are a chartered accountant or an engineer, I think it's important to learn how to read and interpret data. And shared services and outsourcing would be the big data banks for their corporates. So if you are data literate, you would be in high demand going forward in companies. This is interesting. One of the outcome of this metaverse and blockchain would be, since everyone would be changing their profile and changing their skills, because technology would evolve very fast. You cannot just stick to one technology and think that, okay, 30 years I will spend doing the same work. So people will need to evolve and keep changing their skills. So the average employee tenure in company would reduce. Today it's 8, 10, 15 years. Going forward, it would be 2, 3, 4 years, because after that, employees would need to reskill themselves. And this, to me, as a leader or a manager, is a little scary thought. My hiring, my training, everything will go up significantly, because employees would not want to do a same job for too long. And obviously, all of this will have an impact on the performance management and KRA management of employees. So that's the kind of technology change which we are talking about, which will impact shared services and outsourcing world going forward. Holacracy is a third phenomenon, and I'm not too sure how many of you would have heard about it before, but holacracy is a system for managing a company where there are no fixed roles and employees have the flexibility to take on various tasks and move between teams freely. Today, we have multiple departments. Finance, within finance, we have AP, AR, GL, tax, treasury. Then we have commercial, then we have HR, then we have marketing. Very soon, we will see a holacracy phenomena wherein employee would continuously work partly for finance, partly for commercial, partly for HR. It means no vertical hierarchy, only matrix organization, no vertical management. In fact, one of the company in US, not too sure what's the name. I think, yeah. Anyway, they have actually eliminated all the designations. There is no CEO, there is no CFO, there is no manager. Everyone is an employee. Because there is no transaction processing happening, people would only analyze and interact. They do not need managers. Everyone would be individual contributor, self-sufficient, self-owned profiles. So this will bring a significant change in the organization structures of the companies. So managerial bench, these are some of the implications of this new holacracy phenomenon which is happening. Yeah. So customer expectations will also change. I mentioned about nearshore and offshore. Once you are in a virtual environment, doesn't care whether you are 100 kilometers away or 5 kilometers away. You can always come on metaverse platform and interact and have a coffee. Standardization versus customization. Shared services is all about standardization, but more and more companies are wanting customization. I don't want standard one size fit all kind of solution. Everyone wants a customized solution for themselves. So that's the kind of change which will happen in shared services and outsourcing industry always. Transactions will be eliminated. Robots will take over all transactions. People would only be involved in analyzing and providing meaningful insights. So with this, I strongly believe that future of outsourcing is exciting. It will change definitely, but it will change for good. It will bring in better skills, it will bring in better career opportunity, and it will bring in more meaningful career aspirations for our people. Thank you. So,
Okay, sir. Thank you. One or two question we can take if you allow us. After rest of the question we can take in panel discussion. So one or two question. One question is: will blockchain make traditional CA role redundant?
nothing will make CA role redundant. Nothing will make CA role redundant. It is just that ICI needs to include blockchain as part of their curriculum. That's all.
That's true. Thank you, sir, for your nice presentation. May I request Ruta madam to give a hearty vote of thanks, well-deserved vote of thanks to CA Navneet Bhansal, sir.
Yes, it is indeed my pleasure. Sir, fantastic session. I've been hearing it for last an hour and it really gives a wonderful insight into what exactly is outsourcing. And not only that, I really liked your 2 points. One point is regarding, we need to have a psyche change in the sense that we need to adapt to the changes. And I'm sure that we as chartered accountants are definitely adaptable to any situation. So yes, the future of outsourcing is bright, as you rightly said. And another point, what I really thought that I should mention it again is that whoever wants to venture into this field needs to really think of the technology that is coming up. And as you are rightly summarized, you have not only given us, various insights into what kind of technologies are coming up, but I think you made a very valid point there when you said that we need to select the right technology. And yes, that selection will make or break the decision, I feel. So really a fantastic session, sir. And I will just end it with the sentence which I just read on outsourcing, that you do what you do best and outsource the rest. So, so thank you very much, sir. Really, it was very nice listening to you. It was indeed our pleasure.
Thank
And now I hand it over for the next proceedings and I'm definitely looking forward to how to really set up this outsourcing business now in the panel discussion. Thank you once again, Navin sir.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Ruta. Thank you. And now we should move for our panel discussion on the nuance of setting up and functioning of outsourcing business. So for panel discussion, we have CA Vivek Shah, CA Jigar Doshi, and CA Prashant Bhat, and our moderator is CA Mazhar Lokhandwala. May I request CA Rinkesh Solanki to introduce moderator CA Mazhar Lokhandwala. Please, Rinkesh.
Yes, a very good afternoon to everyone. Really good session going on, and thank you so much, Pinky ma'am. Mazhar S. Lokhandwala is an associate director at Protiviti and is involved in managed business services, accounting and reporting, internal audits, and process reviews. He is a chartered accountant by qualification and has done his graduation in from Mumbai University. He has over 10 years of experience working in MBS, internal audits, process reengineering for multiple industries, including oil and gas, telecom, media, retail, logistics, distribution, manufacturing, etc., and so on. He's also a part of our accounts management committee of WIRC for the year 2022. I request CA Mazhar Lokhandwala to please take ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Rinkesh. Am I audible, visible clearly,
Yes,
everyone?
yes, clearly, yes.
Superb, superb. Thank you. So super exciting session, I think, by Mr. Navneet. And yes, outsourcing is exciting, and we are really excited to take this ahead. But before that, let me quickly welcome our panelists and friends. So we have with us Mr. Vivek Shah. Mr. Vivek Shah is a chartered accountant by profession, batch of 2002. He's also a certified public accountant and has 20 years of industry experience working with mid-size to large-size organizations in North America and Canada. He is a founder of the Phoenix Institute, Smart Accounts, and Infinity Globus, which are engaged in international accounts and tax outsourcing. So thank you, Vivek ji, for joining us and welcome to the panel.
Yeah, thanks, Mazhar.
Yeah, with that, we have CA Prashant Bhat. Prashant is a managing director in the technology consulting practice with Protiviti and has over 20 years of experience. He's a chartered accountant, CISA, CIA, BSILA, and SAP FI certified. He has experience in the areas of cybersecurity, incident response, TPRM, IT audits, and digital forensics. Prashant has experience in working with clients in the IT, ITES, telecom, EPC, BFSI, and manufacturing sectors across geographies such as India, Middle East, Europe, South America, and Japan. In the past, he has been associated with the Big Four in the form of KPMG and PwC, and has also been a speaker at many of the cybersecurity and focused events. So welcome, Prashant, to the panel. Last but not the least, we have Mr. Jigar Doshi. He is a visionary in automation and in line with the global trends. Jigar is a chartered accountant by profession and has over 18 years of extensive work experience in the field of indirect taxation. His domain expertise includes GST, customs, erstwhile indirect taxes, and UAE VAT legislations. He has substantial experience in advisory, compliance, refund assessments, representation, and litigation. He is also an author of 2 books, E-Invoicing and GST Audit and Assessments. He was awarded Young Accountant of the Year 2019 by IAB Awards at London. And he's also a part of the 15-member Indian group of ministers meet for simplification of Indian GST return process. He is the founding partner of Tax Technology Managed Services. So super happy, super excited to have all of you all here. So, Mr. Navneet gave us a great presentation and view of how the outsourcing industry is going to be. And to set the context for our panel discussion and for the benefit of our audience, I would want to, engage the three of y'all and have a discussion on how a new chartered accountant or a fresh chartered accountant or a small size CA firm who is super excited about outsourcing business or the managed services business, So I'm sure he cannot directly get to what JSW Shared Service Center is, or the Accentures or the Deloittes or the, Genpacts of the world. So with that, Vivek ji, I will first come to you that if I am a small CA firm of say close to 10, 15 people, I have 2 or 3 chartered accountants, I'm the founding partner, and I feel that the outsourcing world is really exciting. What would be the starting point for me if I want to get into this outsourcing business?
Okay, Mazhar, really a good questions, and my discussion will be more on the compliances side, especially to the US tax and accounting and auditing services, Canadian tax and accounting auditing services, UK or Australia. And this is the something I think that the small accounting firm in the India or maybe a fresh chartered accountant can explore their career. I discussed the same thing in the Ahmedabad branch, Rajkot branch. But before that, apologize for my dressing. Today we had a opening of our 7th office in the Ahmedabad, and I just came from the opening. That is the reason I'm in kurta, so I apologize for the dressing. But let me discuss how we start this industry 20 years back, okay? So, and especially the US tax and accounting industry. And that is a very big industry, and a lot of scope is available for any fresh chartered accountant or maybe a small accounting firm to explore that area. In 2001, okay, the first US tax preparation started in India, in Ahmedabad, in our Manubhai and company. Everyone knows the Sitish Patel, Manubhai Patel, the big chartered accountant firm in the Ahmedabad, where I started my career, okay? And this is how the taxation work starts in the India. Then if I see the 20-year cycle, right now it's not outsourcing. I just define, or everyone define this as a co-sourcing, Mazhar, okay? Why it is a co-sourcing? Because now it's the extended team. It's not simple definition of the outsourcing. It is the co-sourcing. And anyone in the US or a Canada or a Australia or a UK, they need the extended team. And after the COVID, each and every industry is struggling with the manpower and the scarcity of the resource. And especially the accounting industry, there is a great scarcity of the resource. If I take the US, Canada, Australia, and UK, even we are facing the same difficulty in the India. Okay. So there is a big potential available for the next 1 year for the everyone to explore this industry. Compliance is mainly our core area. Okay, we know we are the chartered accountant and the proud member of our institute. In this platform, I can say, okay, when I'm speaking to the US platform or Australia platform, I generally say that yeah, it is one of the toughest exam. But I can say here that our institute exam, our ICAI degree, our chartered accountancy degree is the only toughest exam in the world. Okay, so being a chartered accountant, we can explore a lot, taking more work from the US, Canada, and other countries. So answering your questions, first, Mazhar, is the skill set. Okay. So we need to take first the skill set. I'm not asking that you get the CPA certification because it may be a smaller certification as compared to our chartered accountant certification, but the skills, okay, the US tax law, US gas, US gap, this all the skill development courses are right now running on the cloud platform by a various institute in the India. 2 month, 3 month course, just take that course. Okay, take the skills. So whenever you are talking with your connects or your potential clients in the US, it will help you a lot. But the selection would be for the chartered accountant, taxation, accounting, and the auditing. In the accounting, you can see a lot of competition because a lot of companies and the people are offering the bookkeeping and accounting services. But if you take the auditing and especially the tax services, definitely it will help you a lot. Okay. So my first proposal is take the skill development that will be well needed. Okay. Identify the area, identify the country, find the connection, make some travel to the foreign country, meet the people. And I think in that way, you can start the US, UK, Canada, or maybe Australia KPO industry, knowledge process outsourcing. Mazhar.
Great, sir. So Vivek ji, good points I think brought up here about skills, certain compliance activities that we can pick up, as well as traveling to these locations. So I'm just gonna take it one step at a time. Now I have developed the skills. I have identified which companies I want to approach. But when I'm pitching to this client, say a client that is sitting out of the US, what is the value proposition that I can bring to the table? So if a client comes and asks me, okay, I outsource your business, how am I going to benefit?
Yeah,
So what would be your answer to that?
Yeah. See, there are a lot of benefits, but everyone knows what is the benefit, okay, for the outsourcing, whether it is a cost cutting or maybe a higher level services or a good IQ level that the India is purchasing. But apart from that, okay, make your proposal unique. Mazhar, we know, okay, whenever there are the changes in the world, okay, everyone is standing on the equal platform. The major tax reform, if I talk about the US, major tax reform happened in the US in 2017 by the great President Trump. Right now in the COVID, the ERC and so many others area, maybe a small area, you can start with that, okay, rather than competing the other firm with the generalized area. I will take this few ERC, employee retention credit, the business valuation kind of the work, tax litigation kind of the work. There are a lot of areas are available. Okay, just make your service unique. Okay, so you can differentiate with the others. That is the reason I am saying that the skill development. Okay, take the 2 or 3 or 4 month classes with the good institute on the cloud platform. Take acquire the knowledge. Being a chartered accountant, it never be a difficult for the any chartered accountant to understand the US tax law, US gap, and the US gas. but the make your proposal unique. Okay, there are so many areas I've spoken here: the ERC, the business valuation, the nexus study, the sales tax. Very simple, right? In the definition, but the sales tax is very, very complex in the US because still there are no country level indirect tax in the US. After the Supreme Court decision in 2018, the nexus study, okay, physical nexus and the economic nexus is very, very complicated. Hardly few accounting firm is offering. If you take the example in the India, no one is offering. Okay, we offer at our company, or maybe hardly one or two companies are offering that service, the nexus study. It is a big market. Okay, so identify analytically with your analysis. Okay, identify the service, pitch that service. Then if you engage the client, they will hire for all other services in the future. Okay, that is the best way for the any young chartered accountant to enter, because there are a lot of law changes in the US. And whenever there are changes, everyone at the equal platform. Okay, whoever read, study it, they can execute. Okay.
Great. Thank you, Vivek ji, for this. So I would pick a couple of points from what you had said about value proposition and cost value benefit. So with that, Jigar, I would want to come to you. And there is a lot that is being talking. We are talking about digital intelligence and the way ICS should move towards the digital side, ERP, etc. So, what in your view is the whole automation or the data analytics that we can bring in? So, I believe you are also a part of you're the founder of the TMSL, where you are heavily engaged in creating tax automation tools. And Mr. Vivek also mentioned a lot about tax compliance, about the US that can be brought to India. So, what is your take on this entire automation scheme of things?
Well, you've asked me a question and given me a few minutes to answer. Mazhar, I think this I'll have to answer in an automated way, I guess, in the way your question is. It's a vast ocean which we are entering now. Let me try speaking out loud and putting my thoughts and try to simplify it. So what we spoke about and what we heard from Navneet ji and now Vivek ji is the concept of outsourcing. So I will not touch on that space, but we all should be aware about three space: outsourcing, core sourcing, and insourcing. Okay, the world has moved and keeps moving. It's a cyclical movement. When the entire world was saying in-house teams are what they want to have. Gradually, they started moving towards the space where core sourcing model was very prevalent between 2007 till 15 or 18 rather, and where the in-house team was doing most of the work and it was outsourced. Most of the work was outsourced, which was supposed to be outsourced from cost perspective and efficiency perspective. And now what we are seeing is an outsourcing model more and more working, which is the reason is specialization, where people are specialized and people are aware about what is to be done in the most appropriate manner. So the movement from insourcing to core source to outsource, I believe the only two reasons would be cost effectiveness and the specialization. So coming back to my topic of automation, specialization and the skills that Vivek ji mentioned, he was mentioning about the South Dakota case of the Nexus in US, and the skill set that one has to bring in is very huge. But assuming that skill set is being arrived, you are an expert in IFRS, you are an expert in tax, you are expert of US tax or US sales tax, or you could be an expert in accounting, a basic accounting. You could be an expert in whatever you are doing. Assuming that is done, now what is to be done is bringing the cost effectiveness. Now, how do you bring in cost effectiveness? Through multiple ways of doing things. One of it is automation, correct? That is where you land up into the automation discussion, Mazhar. That why are we speaking about automation suddenly? Is because we need to bring in cost effectiveness. Whether we are an in-house tax team, whether we are an outsourcing team, or whether we are just a consultant, we need to bring in effectiveness, a cost effectiveness and efficiencies around us. So that brings us to the question of what is really an automation. And we have been talking about data analytics as one of the aspects. I believe data analytics is one of the automation. Okay, there are, in at least what I see, automation as a space, and I bifurcate the automation discussion into 5 major verticals. And this is my personal view. It could be different for different people. So let me just try bringing in 5 verticals, and then let me elaborate further. The first would be data management vertical, which is not analytical in nature. So only data massaging, getting your data in place from wherever it is. It could be a small a firm having, let's say, a basic, let's say, a 50 lakh turnover, to a high complex firm of having a 5,000 crore turnover. Everywhere, data management is a bigger challenge. It could be, a small firm would be having an invoice mentioned, a handwritten invoice. A large firm would have an invoice which is e-invoice in an SAP ERP 6.0. But the problem is not about the value. The problem is about whether the data is correct, whether the data is punched in properly, whether the accounting is done appropriately. And that is where data management automation is required. Wherein a simple concept of garbage in, garbage out is what we have seen all the time, right, in our life. So if the data management automation is done appropriately, all other automation space can automatically start working correctly. People are unfortunately not able to prioritize the automation space, and hence I believe there is a bigger rigmarole that we see all the time. So I believe the first line of thinking should be the first vertical of data management. Assuming the data management is done appropriately, and again, there are various ways of doing data management. We will speak about it. The second is the process automation. So process automation also does not mean data analytics. Process automation means that you have to look at your own processes. You could be a service entity, a trading entity, or a manufacturer entity, either of the 3 or a mix of 3. You have to see your current processes and you have to automate as much as possible. I'm not on how to automate, Mazhar. I'm sorry, I'm taking some time, but I'm just saying what to automate is something that you have to work upon. The second vertical should be the process, R2R process, which is record to report, O2C process, order to cash, P2P process, procurement to pay. If you look into these 3 processes, entire functions are covered of a business. So you have to see the second way of looking at it, whether your processes are automated or not. Then comes the productivity automation, which means the workflow management. We talked about that. Navneet ji mentioned about that hierarchical management of the industry that is people looking at, and no designations. Everyone is self-independent. There is a workflow management. There is an automation where you have to see that whether you can automate the way the thing is happening. A factory worker may be looking at a manufacturing an activity, but it could be a series of 10 different line commandments looking at, whether we can minimize it and have it only 3 people looking at it, or 3 lines looking at it. So that is an automation which have to be worked upon on an efficiency perspective, and you're automating the workflow itself. There is a third kind of productivity automation. Fourth is analytical automation, which is what we were talking about, data analysis. Data is the new oil, data is new electricity, all is said and done. We are there, we are aware about it, and data is actually the new machine. Can we look into that data analytics appropriately? Yes, we can. We as chartered accountants have been seeing data from day one. It is just that we have to now technologically see it. We are the only era of people who have seen RG23 registers also in excise. Correct? So no one has seen just those kind of data earlier. Handwritten manual data. Munim ji ka jo register dekha hua hai, wo hum log ne dekha hua hai. So can we look at this kind of data appropriately? That is where analytical data comes into picture, 4th vertical. And 5th is the customer interface vertical. When we say customer interface, means anything which could be interfacing thing, which includes the MISs, dashboard, submissions, internal management, external management, whatever it could be. Data says that more than 20% of the time in any industry is spent only in internal management, which is nowhere linked to the business. You need an MIS, some senior will call up and say, "Aaj kitna sales kitna hua last month ka bata, ye kyun sales nahi hua, idhar kyun purchase hua," etc., etc. So this MIS, dashboard, customer interface, all these forms part of the 4th-5th kind of automation space. That is what automation is all about. Now we have to see as chartered accountants, how do we bifurcate into these 5 verticals which vertical suits us, which vertical suits our skill set, and the type of function that we want to do. For example, let's say me, I'm a tax automation guy. I will look at productivity vertical first. I will look at data management first. And I will try to see how I can automate the tax functions itself. I will not see a customer interface or probably data analytics at this stage. I will look at it later because first I want to automate the functions itself, the processes itself. That is what an automation is all about. Mazhar.
Jigar, I want to probe you further on this. What if I say I don't want to automate anything and I'll just go ahead with my outsourcing business without automation? How would that journey look like? Or do you think it's value left on the table?
It will be because we are competing, Mazhar. Globally, as you saw in even Navneetji's presentation, there was a sideline comment, Poland, India, Malaysia, you would have seen that arrow. And in fact, China, we cannot forget, in kind of not automating, but the mass scale work that they're doing. If you really see what your statement is, if you don't automate and can we do this activity, answer is yes. China is doing it right now. But China itself is also moving because they are labor incentive. They don't want to see efficiency coming in and mobilizing the resources because they have enough resources with them. But even they are automating things. So if you can think of that aspect, if your labor incentive, if you can provide the same activity to a client with a lower cost, you can have the lower cost either by infusing more labor into it or automating it. As an economy, I don't believe we are having labor incentive undoubtedly, but are we enough to compete with the Polands and Malaysias of the world? I don't think so. So I would believe the competitive edge will go away very soon, if not immediately.
Great, thank you actually for clearing that off. So I think in the last 2 hours we've almost spoken a lot about data and data movement, etc. So I would want Prashant's help in this one. Prashant, if I'm setting up say an outsourcing business or a shared service center, I will be receiving a lot of data from the client, processing it at my end, and then sharing the deliverables in the form of reports, journal entries, etc. What do you think how should I structure, or what kind of infrastructure I should have in my CA office so that I can support it and probably keep the client comfortable? Okay, yes, your data is in safe hands. Prashant, I'm sorry, you're on.
Yeah, Mazhar. So I think fundamental question is, and it's a very good question. I think the first question you should ask yourself is whether you need to get the data into your infrastructure, right? So primarily when you're looking at data, especially when you're talking about tax data, financial data, something that you're outsourcing, crown jewels, right? Confidential business information of a client. Now this could be in the nature of contracts, it could be in the nature of invoices, it could be in the nature of financial statement elements. People information, personally identifiable information, right? So you've got lots of stuff that people, things can go wrong. And unlike India, where our data privacy laws are just taking shape, right? In some of the markets in the US, maybe in Europe, personal privacy data, is a big challenge, right? So any data that you handle, you have three basic risks. One is violation of privacy norms or privacy laws that you have. Secondly, there could be potential violation of insider trading stuff, UPSI. Yeah, so that could be a big element. The third bit is also around just confidential or business sensitive data that could bring down the business, or that could go to the competition, that could impact it, right? That could impact the way the client's business runs. So in such cases, I think one of the things that you need to really think about is whether you need that data within your environment, or you have negotiating or strong skills to speak to the client to say, hey, why don't we have the data hosted in your environment? It doesn't move out. You cut down the risk of any leakage that is there, right? And you operate virtually. I mean, with the COVID situation coming in, I think all of us are pretty much used to Zoom calls like we're having this conference virtually. So you can have similar operations. You can have a virtual desktop at the client environment, which you can access rather than taking the risk of bringing the data onto your environment, right? Now, having said that, in case you do have limitations on that front, especially when you're dealing with Europe and European clients, I think the first preference is that they would always prefer you as a service provider, when you do critical processing, the information processing, to comply with the SOC 1, SOC 2 requirements, right? So which really require you as a CA organization or as a service providing organization to have a proper risk and control framework around IT as well as business processes, because you're outsourcing a part of their process as well, right? So that means separate infrastructure, people working in maybe enclosed, disclosed areas. So in our experiences, we've seen contracts where people actually say that if you're doing my work, please ensure you're in a separate enclosure. It's controlled by access. People can't shoulder surf and watch what you're doing separately so that data gets leaked, right? So contractually, they built in a lot of these clauses that align with their either regulatory environment and requirements, or also of course from a data privacy perspective, right? So you ideally need to invest in separate IT infrastructure for each of the clients that you work with. So hence it's a trade-off. So if you really have a large project, then you can think about investing and you think that it will give you long-term benefits, and yes, right? Otherwise, I think the smarter thing to do is actually to talk to the client and make them understand that it's not a good idea to get the data out, right? But keep the data in your environment. Now this is possible in case you're doing manual processing. Again, like my fellow panelists like Jigar and Vivek would mention, in case you are using automation, yeah, then you'll have to do a balancing act, provided maybe you can install your processing tool on their environment, or you can have maybe redacted or I would say sanitized data coming to your environment to cut down the risk, right? So that would be the two ways to do it. No straight answer. It's always gray, never black and white.
No, but great thoughts brought in, Prashant. I think this is excellent. That can we leverage the client's infrastructure for this activity instead of us investing in the infrastructure at our end and then worrying about the data security. But I still want to probe you on this one. Say the client is not very comfortable and like, no, we don't want you to give access to our intranets, or we don't want to give you the VPN access, or only for the accounting part. But then there is a lot of data processing that you should do, or bring out certain tools that can crunch data. With that, keeping in mind and assuming that the client is not, helping me out with this one, it's like, no, there will be a lot of data that will be transferred. So what kind of cyber security or data security risks that you see?
Yeah, I mean, ideally, so the biggest challenge is, with computing, you can access data via phone, via laptops. People use USB drives. You use, as a backup measure, you say, I will back it up on my hard drive. But see, these are big no-nos. The more you increase the footprint of data within your IT infrastructure, the more are the chances that either you lose them and someone who is not supposed to have access has access to it, or people actually attack, right? So I'll tell you cyber risks that we see in terms of shared service or outsourced service delivery by CAs like us, right? So what we see in one area, we see ransomware, cyber attackers targeting service providers, especially when it is like 3 days away from filing date, right? And we see these attacks, right? So this is the first cyber risk that we see. Second cyber risk is, and this is, it sounds like a James Bond or a Mission Impossible movie, but we've seen hired hackers actually targeting the weakest link, right? They know large companies will have superb cyber defenses, but if they target the vendors and the service providers who service these companies with critical data, they know they can get their data out without even touching the larger company, right? So we have targeted malware, targeted attacks on service providers to steal information that hackers required. In many cases, before the quarterly results come in for medium-sized companies to large-sized companies, we have heard of cases where hackers steal the data. It becomes unpublished price of sensitive information. They take positions in the market, right, and they make money out of it, right? So these put not only the company at risk from a regulator perspective, but also the service provider at risk, right? So from a security standpoint, I think what the fundamental thing you need to do is ensure your data is at one and only one place, right? It is not across 10 desktops, 5 laptops, on one backup on Google Cloud, one backup on Microsoft Cloud, one on Gmail, right? Avoid multiple footprints of data. Keep the data at a single source, single point of truth. So tomorrow when the assignment is over and the client, and many of them do, they ask for certificates of secure deletion, right? And you're in a position to actually delete it and show them screenshots and certify to say, I've deleted it, right? So that's the first thing is, centralize your data, focus and ensure that data is in one location and maybe one location for the backup in case things go wrong, right? Secondly, invest in commercial tools, right? When you're working with international companies, don't install freeware antivirus on your laptops or desktops, right? The first thing that they will look at before they even give you projects is how secure your desktops are, whether using licensed software on your laptops and desktops, right? Are you when you surf the internet, people just can't go to Dropbox and move stuff from your laptop to the cloud. Right? So they will ask you to invest in antiviruses. They will ask you to invest in DLP software to prevent data leakages or theft. They will ask you to invest in network security software that will, promote safe browsing and not leakage of data, right? So that, at the end of the day, any tax data or any data, financial data that you, do for either for transaction posting, analytics, or processing, it's vital to them, right? And they would not want multiple points of leakage. And the clauses with US and European clients is also quite heavy. They will put in huge indemnity clauses if they find the data lying outside. Right? So those things do happen. So invest in good endpoint, laptop security, invest in good servers and network security, right? And also when you're going on the cloud, sometimes people forget that the cloud is someone else's computer, right? So ensure that you buy the right package within the cloud. That also gives you those defense mechanisms so that data does not leak out of the cloud. Maybe you've secured your laptops and networks, but when it's someone else's computer, you also ensure that your data is adequately protected.
So, Prashant, actually, I would want to thank you for this, sensitizing this issue, because, a small firm or a small practice who's just getting into outsourcing would be like, why would someone hack my PC? There are much bigger companies to hack and a lot of data. But I think that you brought out a very critical point here that they go with the weakest link. And probably if our systems are not on point, it opens up the whole Pandora's box of data that can leak and then can lead to a lot of GDPR issues also if it is an international client. So great, yeah. Thanks for that insight, Prashant, on that one. So with that, Vivek, I think we've covered quite a bit of how to start my business, what kind of work can be automated. I would want to go back to Vivek ji, and I would want you to give is there any regulatory requirement or any specific infrastructure needs? So Prashant did mention about certain cybersecurity related infrastructure that we should keep in place, like antivirus, etc. But from a qualification perspective, I know you touched upon it in your first question, but is there any specific requirements by, say, a US taxation or from someone from Europe or Australia? If they want to outsource their tax and accounts, yes, a chartered accountant or a firm has to have these kind of skill sets or has to have these kind of qualifications per se.
Yeah, Mazhar, there are the some requirements. So let me talk about the US. Okay. So see, the clients in the foreign country are very, very sensitive with the data security. Okay. And they just wanted to make sure that the outsourcing partner is taking care of the data security standard. So mostly they have a criteria that you must domicile in the US. So if you're starting the US outsourcing business or maybe targeting the bookkeeping, taxation and other work from the US country or maybe Australia or other country, make sure you domicile in the country, okay? And it is very, very simple to create your own company or LLC in the US. US doesn't require any resident director. So 100% foreign shareholding, you can open your company in the US. That is the first criteria. Second, okay, since our back office operation here in the India, so I generally suggest that you take the ISO certification. If you are serving your client to the European country and the UK, then make sure you are GDPR compliant company. If you are doing the work in the US, then make sure you are the SOC 2 compliant company, because they put this kind of the requirement that the outsourcing provider must have this kind of the data security standard in place, because they are very, very concerned with their client's data. Okay. And the third, they are okay with the Indian chartered accountant. Everyone knows in the world, okay, our chartered accountancy degrees. So they are not that specific that you must be a CPA from the US or maybe enroll agent or a CPA from Australia, but that may be a little bit value addition. But later on you can plan, okay? But no hard and fast requirement. But if you go in very detail with this industry, I suggest the passage of the time, 1 to 2 years, you can take the US CPA certification. Good thing is that exam after the COVID is available in the India and any part of the major city of the Indias. So I think that these are the basic requirement that any person, I'm talking about the US accounting firm outsourcing their work to the Indian accounting firm. Okay. Second layer is the US business industry, the healthcare industry, restaurant industry, and the so many other industry. They are outsourcing their finance and account function to India. Again, they need this standard. Okay. So I think that the domestication is required, is not mandatory. I'm not saying it's mandatory, but it is required and it is not that tough. Second, okay, some ISO certification, GDPR compliant, and the SOC 2 kind of the standard that will give the more confidence to your prospective client. And the third, okay, take some local degree in the future whenever you get chance, or maybe hire the few people who are foreign qualified that will give the good team combination while serving the clients. Okay.
Great. Thanks for that, Vivek ji. So I think we have spoken about how to start my business, how do I pitch, what value proposition. Jigar brought in the whole angle of the 5 verticals of automation and digital. Prashant gave us something on cybersecurity. Now I have got a client. Okay, so I've got a client on board. I'm very happy. It's a tax related client who's told me that year on year all my tax compliances and my periodic assessments etc. has to be done. So Jigar, I want to come to you on this one. How would you start the work and carry on the operations? Okay, you know, the data or the likes, the nuances, you know, the small issues that you would face. So all looks very fancy and colorful on the outside, but I know when you get into the business, there are small issues, you know, language issues, cultural assimilation, a lot of these challenges we face. So Jigar, I want to come on this point of how do I now execute once I have got a client on board.
Okay. So whether it's an Indian client, Indian laws or foreign laws, I think the principles would remain the same. And hence, whilst I'm practicing into Indian laws and specifically indirect taxes, I believe this would be relatable to the other laws as well. So let's say you have onboarded a client and we are assuming that the outsourcing is on the tax compliances. So what would be required, Mazhar? One, first of all, we would need a compliance calendar in place. We need to start with the fact that what all compliances we are supposed to do. Second, we would need to know the process of the data transfer. So, once, let's say you have a due date of 5th of the next month where you are supposed to file some return. It could be a GST return, it could be a local VAT return or an income tax TDS return or whatever it could be. How are you going to be preparing for that return? So the final outcome is what we know, but how are we going to start and where are we going to start from the data is something that we need to know upfront. And we typically call it as an IRL, information requirement list. So that IRL or the document requirement list, DRL, needs to be prepared pre-hand and agreed with the client that this is what we need with you. With basic experience that I'm having of 18 years, I believe, Mazhar, the biggest problem lies there, that the IRL and the DRL are not very specific. You know, the format of the requirement data is not very clear. So, the most problematic situation comes there where the data dump is provided by the client. And then we have to decode and start understanding the data from, the base level. We have to remember that we are the outsourcing partner and we are not the business partner. When I say business partner, it means that we don't really do the business with them. From the journey of outsourcing partner, we have to go to the business partner where we actually know the business and we know the nitty-gritties of the business, which will be sitting in the accounting space of the data dump. So the journey of that takes some time and experience into it. I would believe anything less than 6 months or a year is not enough time spent on that data. So before we decode it, we have to be very clear what are we reading, what are we understanding, and then only we do the compliances, because we are touching a point of being compliant with that local laws. So, that is the second point. So first is onboarding a client and having a compliance calendar. Second is having an IRL, DRL based in the format prescribed. Third is actually doing the compliances. And again, I'm assuming that we all have the skill set of whatever we are pitching for and we are onboarding a client for that. And hence we need to know that we are having a basic level of maker checker concepts. because that is where, I go traditional only. I don't want to reinvent the wheels. If there is a maker checker concept in the compliances world, it is good to have, and another, it is must to have. And last would be automation, which we spoke about, whether whatever we are doing can be done in a better manner is simple question that we have to ask ourselves, and we have to see around us whether it can be automated or not. Why Accenture, why TCS, and why so many outsourcing partners, why GBS is working so well is because they have automated the entire accounting space. Correct? The booking of the invoice itself is not happening through manual intervention. It's happening completely automated. So can we automate that thing? And yes, if answer is yes, then we should do that, and we should work towards it so that we can onboard further clients.
Jigar, I just want one more question. Now, you spoke about return filing and conducting compliances in India. So specific to a client that is from abroad, there might be a burning question in any consultant's head. What if I go wrong? What if there is some penalty or some interest implications? How do you tackle that as a situation at two levels? One, when I'm forming the contract with the client, as well as the second level when it has actually happened. How do I I'm sure we've all come across this situation even in the Indian context, but then specifically because the amounts here involved are huge.
Yes. So yes, very important question, Mazhar. Not only in the Indian context, in foreign context, and everywhere. And in fact, there is one question which is just there in Q&A box, says professional indemnity insurance available for global work done. So this is the same question which you're asking, Mazhar.
Yes.
2 points. One, in any engagement letter. So first of all, for any work that you're doing, you need to have an engagement letter. For any engagement letter, you need to have a terms and conditions of the business. In the terms and conditions of the business, you need to have an indemnity clause. So what typically we do, and we have seen this in multiple engagement letters that we sign, we have a very categoric indemnity clause mentioned, saying that if 1, 2, and 3 things are happening, for example, there's a human error happened, and there is an error. I'm not saying that this is an error of, I'm not pinpointing the client or the data. I'm saying it's my mistake. It's a human error. How do I indemnify? Is to an extent, I will indemnify. Let's say 3 times of my fees that I'm recovering. Correct? That is what the indemnification I would agree upfront with them. It is obviously going to be a to and fro with the legal teams that we need to do, but we need to find out a space wherein you define that final liability that is sitting on you. It cannot be linked with the liability which is the outcome of the error. It has to be a liability which is linked with your fees, or linked with your efforts, or linked with a random number which is within your capacity. Number one. Assuming that you have the indemnification in place and the clauses in place. Second point you mentioned, what do we do during the execution? Before that, there's one more thing that we all have to remember is insurance. Unfortunately, whatever we have seen in the professional indemnification world, insurance is not taken most of our time. We need to be insured well. It's called a PI insurance, and it has to be taken up well. It is not a random insurance. It is an insurance based on the engagement letters that you sign up with. So you have to submit all your insurance, the information to the insurer, on basis which they will insure you, and they will give you a backup that in case such kind of thing happens, we are backing you. So today, if you want to take a normal health insurance, you will do all the tests and come up with the health check report, and then your insurance is being taken. Similarly, a PI insurance is also taken wherein you have to give the data of the contracts that you are entering into, or you will enter into, and then take an insurance as a backup. That is what you need to do in case you are entering clients like these, because mind you, Indian laws, you may be seeing a case of 1988 yesterday at Supreme Court. That is what happened yesterday, and there was a 1-year imprisonment happened. So 1988 case, let's not get into that concept, but yesterday Supreme Court ruled into a 1-year imprisonment for a 1988 case. I don't want to talk about that case right now, but that is a long gestation period. In foreign laws, this is not something that you will see. You will see immediate actions coming into it, and hence this professional indemnification is most important. And last and the least, but not the least, is you need to confess to the client. Wherever there is an error, you need to go back and tell them this is the problem. Most of the times, the foreign mindset, what I've seen is they will accept the errors and they will move on in life and agree to whatever has happened, because it's ultimately a human thingy.
Great, Jigar. I believe this is good. A lot of the thoughts around PI insurances, I think all these firms should consider, because we need to evaluate what risks also we are taking. So, when it looks like, okay, the future is exciting, we also have to be critically aware about all the risks that we are going to be taking on. And it should not be that probably we are the outflow based on this risk is more than what revenue we are earning from it. So, absolutely agree with you on this. I think brilliant point brought out. Excellent for that. Thank you so much. Prashant, sticking to the risks part, what is the kind of challenges that you see with respect to cybersecurity for shared service centers, or a chartered accountant firm? So what I would want you to go one, at a more granular level, where we are looking at a CA firm of say 2 or 3 partners with at least 15 people working, and that is the structure. So what kind of challenges? Because I don't think they can invest in huge expenses of a firewall or anti-hacking systems, etc. So how would you address that for our audience here? Prashant, sorry, you're on mute.
My
Sorry.
apologies. Yeah. So let's come to the challenges first, right? So I think from a challenges standpoint, what we've seen is with young and budding chartered accountant organizations coming up, A is that whenever a client put forth the contracts and the engagement letter and the terms and conditions behind it, there's a lot of requirements that they put in from a cyber security perspective, right? Be it data protection, storage, how you can transmit the data, who you can share the data, right? What laws you need to comply with. Now, what we've seen is many of the young and budding chartered accountant firms, where they're very good at technically on doing the work, right? But as far as contract compliance in relation to data protection and cyber security, that's where they take a fall. And typically, many of them do sign it. I mean, to say that yes, this is possibly something, and they truly believe that we can do it. Right. In some cases, you sometimes tend to misinterpret clauses or the intent of the language written from a compliance standpoint, right? So, and that becomes the first challenge, right? Where people don't really understand the true essence of the, of the data of the clauses. Now, one example I can tell you is secure deletion, right? So, most people innocently do believe that once the work is done, I will delete the data and I will and share that. Share that screenshots of deletions and certificate to the client. Right? But what really happens is really by, have you really deleted the data? Because, by blowing it off your laptop doesn't mean that the footprint of the data is gone. Right? So in many cases, we find those traces lying out in emails, right? Lying out in hard disks, lying out in backups, right? Also, sometimes they are in printed forms on desk works in files that you keep. Many people do believe that tomorrow if a dispute happens, I need to hold some information back, right? For me to defend my point or defend my calculations in case you're doing tax work, right? So that happens, right? So when you really lead that one liner and you say you can do it, you really need to think whether in spirit you'll be able to achieve it, right? So this is one small example. So that interpretative issues always are there. Secondly, Mazhar, like you rightly mentioned, I think sometimes when international companies start with outsources with vendors like budding chartered accountant firms, right? They tend to I would say overcompensate on the controls that need to be put in place at the end, right? I think they truly want to defend their interest and the decision to outsource it to a much smaller organization, right? And at the same time not accept the risks, right? So budgetary issues and lack of understanding, because in small CA firms, the point is, who will you get to actually monitor the security posture of the operation, right? The cost might exceed the benefit that you're getting. Right? So that's the second challenge that you have, right? The third bit is also with the cybersecurity landscape evolving so rapidly, sometimes we ourselves do not take adequate care and at all levels, right? Even if it's the best cybersecurity consultant in the world, you sometimes are exposed or put up at a risk to be beaten, right? And like I mentioned in my earlier talk, I mean, a simple case of a ransomware. There are ransomwares these days that just target chartered accountant firms, right? Ransomware campaigns that just target export houses, right? So cyber criminals have gone out and metamorphosized themselves, right, from just people who will technically bring down a system to people who can blackmail at the right time. So there are quite a few ransomwares that are running on, I think, in 2020 and 19, right, where during the tax filing times of India, especially time barred returns, right, they kind of encrypted laptops of many CA firms, desktops and laptops, right, and they would ask you to submit ransom, and you're able to recover your client data, right? So under the pressure of a return filing, you sometimes tend to do it, and that becomes a money-making scheme. So, that's the level that they've evolved to, right? So really keeping track, of that and ensuring that you are protected even from the smallest mistake. Right? Again, I reiterate, right? People are the weakest link sometimes. So if your organization, you may have signed up technology, but if people are not adequately trained and coached, you end up making those mistakes. So contractual, investment, people culture, and of course, your ability to track, the prowess of cyber criminals. These are four broad themes that we feel that organizations are yet to mature, and the budding firms yet to mature and reach up to the standard. So that's the challenges part of it. Now, what can you do about it? So, like I said, bare minimum. I think the first thing is, again, like Vivek ji mentioned, right? Each region has got its own requirement to satisfy the customer, right? So while you may be certified GDPR, you may be certified SOC 2 from a US standpoint, while that demonstrates something at a point in time when you give that report, right? It's like us giving a statutory audit report to say at this point in time the company is doing well, but really across the function, is it really doing well? That's a larger question that exists. So in such time, for you to really demonstrate a very clinical and correct operation, I think whatever you have signed up in the agreement for that customer, first of all, ensure that is communicated to your teams that are delivering the assignment to the client, right? Now, this is very, very vital for that to happen, because you may have signed up something, but the guys who execute it, do they really know their fiduciary responsibility to the client as well, right? So that's the basic people awareness. Like I said, people are the basic missing link, right? Secondly, and this is a repetitive theme for all clients here, even if you're a small company or a large company, and they suffer from, even the largest banks in the world suffer from the same issues, that they have multiple touch points for data, right? It's not a single touch point, but multiple touch points, multiple copies, right? And there are different issues operationally as well, because while one department shows up financial results in one way, the other shows in another way. Operationally, while that's a bad mess anyway, but even from a security perspective, you have multiple doors open for either a data leak to happen or a data breach to happen. So from that perspective, limit your data either onto your environment, and like Vivek ji, others have mentioned also, that you might have data domicile requirements. We have our own data localization requirement in India. And so similarly, other regions might have the same. So try and ensure that you keep the data to the extent that it allows you, right? If you're using RP, like Jigar mentioned, if you're using an RPA or AI and ML to run the show to cut your costs and improve efficiency, may not be possible, but try and ensure that you keep the data within the boundaries of the client, right? So you cut down your risk, A, on the cost that you blow up in trying to upscale your infrastructure, and B, because the data doesn't leave the boundary of the organization, anything that happens becomes the responsibility of the client, unless you take your phone and take photos, right? So that kind of cuts your risk to a large extent, right? And it cuts down your investment, especially when you're budding chartered accountancy firm, where sometimes you need to cut your costs, right? It helps you, it helps you launch your business, right? And the client is also like, okay, so I will cut down the clauses in your agreement because the data still lies with me, right? So that becomes the second point. Third point, always, like I mentioned, have a pristine environment. If you're using your laptops or desktops to run a client environment, make sure only the people who are supposed to work on it have authorized, and don't put pirated software onto your laptops and desktops. Right? That's a big no-no, right? And ensure that nobody can plug in USB drives or any other drives that are there within that laptop, so that the chances of malware being transmitted from your laptop to using VPN connections to your client environment cuts down. Or people can spy on the data that you have, or exfiltrate that data, or breach the data out from your environment. Ensure you have surfing ethics, right? Today, on a laptop, you run YouTube, you run Dropbox, you run everything, right? So curb what people can watch in the office, and there are cloud services that you can subscribe to, that will control the way you surf, right? You can put a small agent into your phone, and there are many service providers like Zscaler, etc. At a reasonable cost, they will give you that service, right? So you can control what people surf, right? And you don't just let them surf anything and everything within the organization, right? So that kind of cuts down your risk on people uploading your client data onto their future reference. I mean, we are all in the knowledge business, right? So people would always like to keep their learnings close to them. So the biggest risk is sometimes, ye maine acha calculation kiya, I may need it for future reference. Without unknowingly that they might also take out client information that you would have signed up as a contractor. So ensure that people surf well. You do not allow USBs to be taken in and taken out. Everything that is in the computer stays in the computer, and obviously you will always have backups, right? So ensure that the backups custody is kept with you in a safe, because you're a small operation, right? Make sure that no one, that doesn't become a general hard disk. Gana bhi hai, client data bhi hai, everybody in the office is using it. No, anything that you do for European, for international clients, make sure it's a different room, different area, different laptops, and they are, people just don't, handle it in the way they want, right? So these are basic, basic and bare minimum thumb rules, right? You can, like I said, then have good antiviruses and EDRs that is CrowdStrike. These are versions that are available at quite reasonable cost, right? And most of our chartered accountants, I'm sure, billing to acha hai because we are talented people, right? So I'm sure we can afford some of those good softwares, at least for the US client. The point being, because if you deliver well on your first client and give them a professional experience, maybe you spend more, right? Maybe you spend more. Maybe you don't make that margin the first time. But the point is, once they like you and once they know that you are a secure and a safe partner to deal with, then the sky is the limit, right? Because once they know this is a person I can trust, they've got good practices that they're running in the office, even though they're small, business just flows in, right? Business just flows in, the confidence comes in. But if in the first round, you should do a poor show and then your infrastructure is not good, your people are sharing data here and there on the mail, everything, then I would say you would lose. So that personal discipline is also a key, right? 5 key points. There is a long laundry list of 200 points, but given the paucity of time and the focus of the audience, I'll just keep it that.
No, great. 2 keywords, trust and confidence. What Prashant says, that the client should build trust and confidence. And I think that flows across the quality of service, the quality of infrastructure, and our response time. So first of all, I would like to...
Prashant, one question I can ask to Prashant. In one of the client is BPO, and I observed that their client in USA want HIPAA audit every once or in a year or twice in a year, for that data security purpose and for this purpose. Right. So is it compulsory, mandatory for outsourcing business or what?
What happens is, the point with HIPAA is that the company that they work with, right? HIPAA is basically health insurance and portability. It's relating to health insurance portability. Now, depending on what your BPO client does, right? So if the client is doing claims processing, if the client is doing, insurance claim payouts, right? Or they're reconciling, if they're reconciling customer new policies, etc. You deal with a lot of client data that even the insurance companies needs to watch, because under HIPAA they need to be compliant to the law. So naturally, as a flow down, because the end client is accountable under HIPAA and they need to do those controls, and you are outsourcing, you're running that process for them. Naturally, that part of the audit, because you're going to handle client information and healthcare information, about disease, blood tests, etc. You naturally fall under that ambit to get audited, right? Because your end client, which is the insurance company or healthcare company, needs to demonstrate to say that, yes, I have outsourced an operation and I'm getting that guy who's running that process for me also compliant under HIPAA, right? And this is the piece of the operation he's running. Hence, he is certified. There are no issues found there. Hence, my operation, the larger HIPAA is also fine. So here you go, right? So that's a demonstration that they need to make to the client. So it depends. Obviously, the part is whether it is compulsory or not really depends on what part of the business process is being outsourced and what data he handles, right? That really defines whether it is compulsory or not compulsory, right? So if he's going to run a call center just asking the address of a healthcare provider, then maybe not, right? Unless he's got access to the customer who's calling and the names and the health records, etc. So it really depends. The subject matter of the data and what process they're outsourcing will define whether it is compulsory or not.
Great. Thanks for that.
Okay. Thank you. It's a BPO
and bringing out that element. I would want to take a quick time check. I believe we've overshot a little. Thanks a lot for the panelists to be with us. So Pinky Madam, do we have some time for questions? And I would ask that question to the panelists also, that would you all have some time to answer a few questions from the audience?
Mazhar, in the question answer session, I answered the most of the questions. Okay.
Yeah, I saw that Vivek ji had answered all the questions.
I know
There
will not be enough time, so I just took opportunity to answer. But
thank you, Vivek.
Happy to answer. Okay.
Yeah. Should we have a Q&A session or we have a hard stop?
I think Q&A is all the question answered by Vivek ji. So there is no.
There are two questions pending. Okay, I think that the Jigar and the Prashant can answer. Okay, one is for recording, one is the professional indemnity insurance. So I think Jigar or Prashant can answer that.
Yeah, so Jigar, I think you touched upon professional
Yes.
indemnity insurance.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry, I'm not able to see the question as of now.
No. Actually, question was,
Is professional indemnity insurance available for global work done by an Indian CA? That's the question. Jigar, can you help us out with this one?
Yes, Mazhar, yes, the answer is yes, simple yes.
Great. I think that's as clear as day. Thank you. And I think we have one more question. Okay, I think that's a request, I believe.
Recording.
So great. Thank you everyone for this wonderful session. I've been a part of the managed business services, but I think a lot of new insights I got even these 2 hours. So great. So thanks a lot, everyone. It was a great session. I had a lot of fun with you guys. It's a good session to a lot of key takings. Even in fact, I was taking notes myself, where I will immediately implement in my work. So thank you for this. With that, I believe I will hand it over to Pramita Rathi, CA Pramita Rathi, to give us the closing comments and the word of thanks.
Thank you so much. Actually, whatever I've heard, I'm really amazed by the kind of in-depth study and the imparting of knowledge that has happened in this entire session. I really would like to thank all the panelists and even the moderators for conducting such an amazing session and taking out the time, thank you so much.
Pramita, I believe you're on mute.
Hello.
Yeah, Pramita, we lost the last 10 seconds. You were on mute.
Yeah. So I really want to thank all of you all also to spare the time. I understand that we've overshot a little bit, but I think it was a very valuable, knowledgeable session that we had. So thank you so much to all the presenters and the panelists, the moderators. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Pramita. Thank you so much, Vivek ji, for sparing the time. Thanks a lot, Jigar, for contributing here. And Prashant, as always, coming from the cybersecurity side. So thanks a lot. I would also like to thank WRC for giving us this platform to interact, and probably the budding CAs, as Prashant mentioned, would take a few points here. And as Navneet mentioned, the future of outsourcing is exciting. So let's embark on this journey. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, WHC and the Jigar, Prashant, and everyone. And the one thing, okay, Mazhar, you did a great job, okay?
Yes,
Really
I agree.
great coordination and the great way of asking the questions. So I totally enjoyed. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you. We'll have many more such sessions.
Thank you, Mazhar.
Thank you, CA Vivek ji, CA Jigar ji, Prashant ji, and CA Mazhar to moderate the session so well, very well. Good job.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Have a good weekend and the rest of the day. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thanks all the participants for your patience hearing. Thank you. Vinay ji, close the session. Vinay ji, please close the session.